Hi, and welcome to the Friday episode of Stand Up. I've got a great conversation with the brilliant David Rothkopf. People really enjoyed this when we did it live yesterday, so I hope that you like it. I think that you will. I'm sure that you will. And it starts at about 29 minutes into today's show. But even though it's Friday, I still have your headlines and a clip show for you, albeit a little late because we were up partying at last night's hangout with over 70 people. Former Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn joined us briefly. We sang happy birthday to him, and we had great conversations, lots of laughs. If you want to listen or watch the hangout today, you can access it still just by going to the link that I've put in the Patreon email, although you have to be a paying subscriber. And if you're not, go to patreon.com/PeteDominic right now, because we are around 760 of us now, and lots of new subscribers. Can't do it without your support. Welcome to our community, and we are really glad to have you here. Thank you for joining us. I've got your headlines, I've got some clips, and then I've got to go. I don't know. I just wanted to say I've got one more time, but happy to have you here, and let's get to it because there is a lot going on here on a Friday at the end of September, and I want to let you know that one of the big stories everybody's talking about from yesterday, there's two big ones that I would say, I mean, there's a lot, but it's that our weakened Christian nationalist defense secretary, whose mother hates him, Pete Hegseth, apparently has ordered hundreds, maybe like 800 of the U.S. military's generals and admirals to gather next week on short notice without a stated reason at a Marine Corps base in Virginia next week. So this has created a lot of confusion and a lot of alarm after the Trump administration's firing of senior leaders this year. And I asked Rothkopf about this, and so it put me at ease, and maybe put you at ease too, when you find out that at least his assumption is that this is a publicity stunt, which is why they said it publicly, A, and B, it's really going to be Pete Hegseth trying to control people and get his message out about wokeness and all that nonsense, and probably they'll just shake their head yes and leave. It'll be a big political stunt. I hope that's the best case scenario. So that is something a lot of people are looking at, watching, and we will too. Also, yesterday we got the big news that Trump has finally gotten one of his political enemies that he really had high on his list indicted. It's the former head of the FBI, James Comey. Grand jury has indicted the longtime target of our dear leader, and he was indicted on one count of making a false statement, on one count of obstruction of congressional proceeding in connection with his testimony before a Senate committee in September of 2020. And this is all as a result of Trump's relentless demand for retribution after the FBI investigated his 2016 presidential campaign over possible ties to Russia, which they found plenty of. Anyway, I'll bring you the audio of Comey's statement that he put out on Instagram that I thought was pretty powerful, and appreciated it. I thought this was a good headline. China is leading nations with new climate plans, defying U.S. climate denial. The Chinese president said that by 2035, his country would cut its greenhouse gas emissions by 7 to 10% from their peak. Of course, a day after our Mad King called climate change con job. I've got a couple clips on that coming up. Let's see. What else do I have for you? Oh, this is a fun headline. The Justice Department is suing 6 U.S. states over voter registration lists. And that matters a lot. Really important that we follow this story and talk about it and learn more about why they are doing that. But let's just take it from the words of Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, who said that the request for this information is not normal and that she was required to follow state and federal law ensuring privacy protection for individual personal data. We gave the Justice Department exactly what they are legally entitled to, the public version of Michigan's voter file. The Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice is no longer practicing defending civil rights. In fact, they're trying to take them, of course. And there's a lot of good reasons why we don't want the federal government having this information. So I thought that was a big story worth mentioning and learning more about. That's what I do here in the headlines. I mention these stories so you can be aware that they're happening, and also you can look into, read about them, fact check them, and do whatever you want with them. You could just ignore them. You could worry about them. You could do nothing about them. But either way, that's why I do the headlines here on Stand Up every day. Trump administration has rehired hundreds of federal employees that were laid off by Doge. How about that? They're scrambling to rehire those who shouldn't have been fired. It doesn't sound very efficient to me, which was Doge's charter. Hundreds of federal employees who lost their jobs in Elon Musk's cost-cutting blitz are being asked to return to work. The General Services Administration is giving the employees who managed government workspaces until the end of the week to accept or decline reinstatement, according to an internal memo obtained by the Associated Press. So I thought that was an important story worth mentioning. This is another important one. A federal judge is refusing on Wednesday to reinstate 8 former inspectors general who filed a lawsuit after the Trump administration fired them with no warning and little explanation. U.S. District Judge said that while Trump likely violated the federal law governing the process for removing nonpartisan watchdogs from the office, the firings didn't cause enough irreparable harm to justify reinstating the watchdogs before the lawsuit is resolved. So whatever that means, but that doesn't sound great. Let's go to Paris, where a court in France on yesterday found that their former president, Nicolas Sarkozy, is guilty of criminal association for attempting to use Libya to finance his campaign illegally. He's been sentenced to 5 years in jail and fined 100,000 euro. So how about that? Accountability. I wonder what that feels like. Also should mention that our dear leader, who was once very much against TikTok, has signed an executive order to help TikTok become a U.S. company, U.S. operation in its own company. So there's a lot to be said and looked into about that story. Amazon has agreed to pay billions to settle claims that it tricked millions of people into signing up for Prime. Starbucks plans to close hundreds of its more than 18,000 stores in North America as part of a corporate revamp. Our crazy President Schittler announced tariffs of 100% on certain pharmaceuticals made overseas and of 25 to 50% on other items, including bathroom vanities and some furniture. And now he's offering Argentina a bailout. Wait, what? As Argentina's economy sputters, we're now preparing to send them $20 billion payout or loan. I'm not sure, but how come MAGA's not outraged about this? Of course, Trump and the regime love them, the leader of Argentina, and they want to help him out, apparently. Also, the president hinted at a possible bailout for farmers, which I've been talking about for weeks now. That's a terrible, terrible thing. It's as a result of his horrible policies. For example, last year, China bought nearly $13 billion worth of American soybeans, and since May, it's bought none. How about that? That's terrible. Let's go to the war in Gaza. Speaking of terrible, in its new ground offensive, the Israeli military is apparently flattening parts of Gaza City, razing them block by block, according to the New York Times. In a related story, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas spoke at the UN by video link, vowed that Palestinians would not leave Gaza and that Hamas would not govern the territory after the war. President Trump assured leaders of Arab Muslim majority nations that he would not let Israel annex the occupied West Bank, where the rest of the Palestinians live outside of Gaza City. And Benjamin Netanyahu is going to address the UN today here on Friday, so that should be a lot of fun. Microsoft disabled some services to Israel's defense ministry, citing evidence that it was using the technology to enable surveillance of Palestinians. How about that? Microsoft. We have to give them credit. And Europe's growing anger over the war is spilling over into the arts. Broadcasters will vote next month on whether to bar Israel from the Eurovision Song Contest. How about that development? All right, well, those are the headlines that I've gathered for you today. Now it's time to move on to the clips. Time for the clip show. All right, let's start with that statement. If you haven't heard it from James Comey after he was indicted, he took to Instagram and made this statement. And when he refers to a brave young woman, I think he's talking clearly about his own daughter, who was working at the Department of Justice and was just recently dismissed. Oh, and this has to do with protecting Ghislaine Maxwell. If you look into it, pretty horrible. I love the statement. I thought it was powerful. No matter how you feel about James Comey, I think he did overwhelmingly positive work at the FBI. I've got all kinds of criticisms of the FBI, always have, for sure. And of course, he destroyed his legacy when he came out and announced an investigation into Hillary Clinton, potentially hurting her chances to beat Trump in 2016. And for that, we have a hard time forgiving him. But he did do the rank and file work of the FBI for a number of years, and he was highly respected in the FBI. So a lot of the work of the Federal Bureau of Investigation is essential, and I have a lot of respect for what they do in many ways. And so, I don't know. I didn't need to give that nuanced of an introduction. Here's James Comey.
My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump, but we couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way. We will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either. Somebody that I love dearly recently said that fear is the tool of a tyrant, and she's right. But I'm not afraid, and I hope you're not either. I hope instead you are engaged, you are paying attention, and you will vote like your beloved country depends upon it, which it does. My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial and keep the faith.
All right, there you go. Let's have a trial. Will they even get to a trial? We'll see. But if they do, I think he's going to win. The woman that he now has in there prosecuting is a never done a prosecution ever. That's crazy. She's a former beauty contestant. I don't want to take away from this woman just because she's a physically attractive woman, but you got to wonder if that's why Trump put her there. She's a very attractive, blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman, but more, she's a lawyer. She's an established lawyer, I'm guessing, but she has no business being here. But he dismissed the prosecutor that wouldn't indict Comey and replace him with a loyalist, this woman, and so it's going to be bad. She's not. How could she possibly be successful in this role, having zero experience and now put on this extremely high-profile prosecution? Methinks it's not going to go well for her. One reason why it seems like James Comey might be so confident. All right, moving on, though. It's Climate Week here in New York, so all kinds of things happening and being said. So got a couple clips on that, including former governor of California and one of the biggest stars of all time. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I should warn you, there is a little bit of Trump's voice from his horrible speech at the UN embedded in this clip, which comes from CNN.
The bottom line is that he just never believed in it. And to me, I said to myself, okay, then I cannot really go and be on his team because I'm a big believer that we have to do something about reducing pollution.
It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. Climate change, no matter what happens, you're involved in that. No more global warming, no more global cooling.
What is important is that we let people know, okay, so that's how our president feels. But that doesn't mean we should stop everything. We don't have to wait for the president. 70% of the pollution is getting reduced on a local and state level. So we wish that we have a president that is on our side, but he's not. So let's move forward anyway.
All right. The Terminator weighing in. Now let's go to Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, who is in New York for their Climate Forward event. They had this event, and he refers to this guy, Chris, who's the Secretary of Treasury, who came on after him. But here's that one.
He called climate change the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world. And he said that the scientific consensus on global warming was created by stupid people. What's your reaction to that?
I know Chris is coming up next, and he's got to defend himself, not just Trump. What an abomination. What an embarrassment. What a fraud. And I say that as a guy that lives in one of the most crisis-prone states in America, but a state that's seen lifestyles, places, traditions completely destroyed because of the reality of climate change.
Yeah, well done, well said. Later on, Trump's Secretary of Energy came on and denied it all and got booed, rightfully. And here is his head of the EPA, Lee Zeldin, who's a real piece of work, a bad guy, a hollow barrel, a sycophant, a soldier for Trump, and he is going to go down in history as one of the great villains. Here he is on Fox News with another great villain, Brian Kilmeade, carrying the president's water for him.
Lee, I can't believe just years when everybody would say climate change was a third rail. Don't bring it up. The president says it is a hoax. It is a con job. Where do you fall on this?
The president is absolutely right. And we've seen it in the name of climate change, these left-wing policies willing to cause extreme economic pain for people who can least afford it. We've seen in the name of climate justice grants to $50 million to Climate Justice Alliance. They say that climate justice runs through a free Palestine. In the name of environmental justice, they will have tens of billions of dollars go to their well-connected left-wing former Obama and Biden officials and Democratic donors rather than directly towards environmental remediation, and they're willing to suffocate out entire sectors of our energy economy. And that caused a loss of jobs, higher energy costs. So President Trump is absolutely right. It's something that, with eyes wide open, the Trump mandate is being implemented all year long at the Trump EPA and across the Trump administration. And the rest of the world is taking notice because they're having some of the same problems in their own country.
All right. That guy is a real sack of shit. And I saw that Congressman Tom Suozzi of Long Island, where Lee Zeldin was at one point a congressman, he posted out that the EPA administrator, Lee Zeldin, knows about the risks posed to our drinking water by PFAS. When he represented Long Island in Congress, he helped set up the PFAS task force. Well, his EPA is reversing course on PFAS water standards, and it makes no sense. So that's an important, just a really important data point, I thought. I'm glad I saw that. All right. Now I've got to go to, let's see, Mark Cuban. He was on a YouTube show, and I thought these comments were pretty good.
They're fucking Sinclair, right? So let's talk about the Jimmy Kimmel thing. They don't realize how badly they're fucking Sinclair and Nexstar. Because what's going to happen is you can't put your best content on broadcast television anymore. It'll be all sports and news, but anything else, comedy, scripted, it's going to be so sanitized. It'll be like watching TV in the 60s where you got
Russia.
Or Russia, right? It'll be so limited. But who gets hurt by that? Nexstar and Sinclair. Because other than local news, they're not going to have any great shows. Maybe Shark Tank. That censorship impacts the content that's created, and it only impacts it on broadcast television. And the people that are impacted most by broadcast television changes are Sinclair and Nexstar, which are going to be the largest number of stations. The irony of all this is on the Nexstar Sinclair stuff, they don't know that they're digging their own grave.
Yeah, good stuff. Interesting analysis. I've heard that from other people as well. Now let's go to Trump's former White House lawyer. This is Ty Cobb. He was on CNN last night. I probably should have played this right after I played the James Comey clip. So sorry to be out of order here, but I thought this was a pretty interesting analysis. And it's also not unlike the analysis I'm hearing, reading, seeing from a whole bunch of legal experts. Here's Ty Cobb, who once worked for Trump, defended Trump, and Trump won on CNN, savaging him.
What do you see here?
Well, I think this is a tragic day for America, not because Comey's perfect by any means, but what we have here is a clear vindictive prosecution, a clear selective prosecution. We have a president, for the first time in history, ordering his attorney general to indict his enemies, and the attorney general, instead of being the independent force that she's supposed to be, saying, yes, sir, how fast can I get that done for you? I think if she's concerned about justice for people who have misled the country, reflection on her confirmation proceedings is probably in order, because she talked about even-handed justice, and this is not that. I think that the case is subject to motions to dismiss for vindictive prosecution and selective prosecution. I think, likewise, it's a very weak case, at least based on what we publicly know, and we publicly know an unusual amount about this case because of the Justice Department internal Inspector General's investigation, where he found the person that Comey allegedly authorized to leak the information not credible, and found that Comey was credible. So I think this is a very problematic case for the government to bring, but I think the way in which they brought it is problematic for the entire country. And this is either the end of the rule of law in America, or it's a tipping point against the authoritarian activity that we have seen from this president and his attorney general.
All right. Wow. Powerful stuff from Ty Cobb on CNN last night. Now let's go to, I think it's England, where former President Obama reminds us what it's like to be decent in some comments in a talk that he gave in some arena over there. He weighed in on the announcement about aspirin and autism and all of that, and a little bit more. I thought this was great. Here is former President Obama.
So we have the spectacle of my successor in the Oval Office making broad claims around certain drugs and autism that have been continuously disproved, and the degree to which that undermines public health, the degree to which that can do harm to women who are pregnant, the degree to which that creates anxiety for parents who do have children who are autistic, which, by the way, itself is subject to a spectrum, and a lot of what is being trumpeted as these massive increases actually have to do with a broadening of the criteria across that spectrum so that people can actually get services and help, not to, it's all of that is violence against the truth.
Violence against the truth is a good phrase. I like that a lot. I think I'm going to steal that. All right, not finally. This is Jon Stewart of The Daily Show in a serious moment between jokes. I just grabbed the serious part, and here he is. I thought it was great and powerful, as always.
To bend over back. I just want to say this to Trump's defenders. You don't have to bend over backwards trying to make Trump's authoritarian power grabs seem like the rule of law. He does not give a f*** anymore. He's saying it straight up. Trump is saying, the people like dictators. Trump is saying, I hate my opponents and I want them punished. And Trump is saying, I'll use all the levers of government at my disposal to accomplish that goal. So you can get on board with that and say, I'm with that. Or you can join the rest of us and fight like hell for this constitutional republic. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. Hold on. It is a form of representational government worth preserving and defending.
Yeah, and then came the joke, but it's such an inside joke and callback that taken out of context, you wouldn't have gotten it, and it would have been confusing for listeners, and so I took it out, and I'm sorry. Okay, there you go. Here's some jokes, though. This is Jimmy Kimmel, back again on Jimmy Kimmel Live, and this is some good stuff. And at the end of this clip, they do a bit where they played like an Antiques Roadshow clip, but they dubbed over their own words. It's not really him saying these horrible insults to Trump, but it doesn't get any meaner and funnier. But that's the point. That's the point. You're supposed to be able to do this. And the reason why we hit Trump so hard is because he's such a terrible person. I do think that comedians should speak truth to power, but I do also think that it works best when it's in proportion to what that power is doing. And when you're a tyrant and a petty authoritarian, you're going to get hit the hardest. And Jimmy Kimmel does not hold back.
Other countries look at Trump the way we look at the running of the bulls. Like, what are those people, nuts? What's going on there? Today, Trump signed an executive order that will allow a group of investors to buy TikTok from the Chinese. You know, Congress banned TikTok under Joe Biden because of fears the Chinese government was using it to spy on Americans. But with this deal in place, now our government can spy on Americans ourselves, which is better. TikTok is very important to Donald Trump, even though he's never used it and has no idea what it is. He thinks it's a little breath mint. But the new owners reportedly include the 81-year-old founder of Oracle, Larry Ellison, and 94-year-old Rupert Murdoch, who owns Fox. And now, I don't know what it's like at your house, but my kids are super pumped about the new guys in charge. This is a big deal. Are we really safer going from the Chinese government to the Murdochs? Seems like a lateral move. This is like getting traded from the Celtics to the Celtics, to me. But if you're keeping track of who controls our media now, we have Rupert Murdoch and Larry Ellison in charge of the world's largest social media platform, TikTok. Elon Musk running X. Mark Zuckerberg has Facebook. Rupert Murdoch's son runs Fox News, The Wall Street Journal, and The New York Post. And Larry Ellison's son owns Paramount and CBS. Other than that, though, these guys don't have any way to get their message out. The left-wing libtards control everything, and it isn't fair. This has been... We've learned that. This has been a tumultuous week. Even though we're still being preempted in 60 American cities, on Tuesday, we had our second highest rated show in almost 23 years on the air. Our monologue from Tuesday night has more than 21 million views just on YouTube alone. And I want to say, we couldn't have done it without you, Mr. President. Thank you very much. We got the Trump up, and we appreciate it. And I've noticed that after the big boost we got, other shows on television seem to be taking shots at Trump, too.
This chair came from my stepfather's family. I, at one time, got offered $75 from an antique dealer for it.
Well, I'm happy to tell you this is a genuine Philadelphia Chippendale. Come down here to the skirt. This exquisite carving on the knees. Oh, and by the way, hey, Donald Trump, go yourself. These classic clawball feet, they're round yet lumpy, like Trump's titties. You heard me, you fat orange bitch? At auction, you're gonna get something like $8,000 to $12,000. Easy.
Okay,
so
not bad.
Round yet lumpy, like Trump's titties, you fat orange bitch. That's what they said on the ABC News, the ABC affiliate, Jimmy Kimmel. That's way worse than the joke about Charlie Kirk, which wasn't even a joke about Charlie Kirk. It was a joke about Trump. I mean, that's the point. And I think that's important. And I think we're allowed to do that. And I'm glad that they're doing that not only on cable and not only on stand-up stages that nobody's seen, but on that platform where everybody's seeing it, because that shit was hilarious and on point. And that is your clip show, your headlines. Can't do it without you. 30 minutes. Takes hours and hours, honestly, to put together. It sounds like it doesn't, but it's a lot that goes into it. Most people have producers doing much of it for them. Not me. So patreon.com/Pete Dominic if you appreciate all the work and hours I put into it. And if you want to pay more, you always can pay more than $5, but that's the cost of admission and the minimal cost of support. And I am so grateful for all of you who have signed up recently. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, let's get to one. My guest today is one of our favorites, David Rothkopf. And yesterday's conversation was aired live on YouTube, like most of what I'm doing these days. And the reactions to it were great because we have great chemistry and respect and love for each other. And what I didn't know is that he was good friends. He and his wife were very good friends with Robert Redford. And he wrote a piece for the Daily Beast about that. And we started by talking about that. Please support the Deep State Radio Network. He's got a really great segment with Jeff Jarvis and Dan Frumkin yesterday that we talked about also. And you should go watch that or listen to it. And you should also subscribe to his Substack, Be Like My Mama, and a lot of other listeners who subscribe to his Substack, needtoknow.substack.com. Get his books. Follow him on social media, especially Blue Sky. Let's do it right now with the always great David Rothkopf. Day. Looking forward to talking to you all day. And very glad to see you. You look great. Did you get a haircut or something? You look really good. Sharp.
Thanks. Same to you, Pete.
Yeah, thank you. I saw your post the other night about Robert Redford. and deeply upset, not that Redford had died, but that you were actually good friends with him. I was very jealous when I read that.
I love that about you. You're a big person, Pete.
Yeah. And I wanted to attack you publicly, but I wasn't sure everybody would get it. Nonetheless, it was a beautiful piece. Despite my jealousy aside, tell me a little bit about how you met him and how much time you spent with him, or I guess what you learned from the piece is really wonderful. What?
I just love your question. Tell me how you met him and how much time you spent. Because, seriously, David, are we really friends? Or was this just somebody?
I guess that's what I was. It is what I was getting at.
Bullshit, and you're just trying to ride some news story.
Now every famous person, so many famous people, and you're actually friendly with them or friends with them in this case. And I feel like now the joke is going to be every single icon that dies, I'm just going to tweet. I'm just going to post about you. Wait till Rothkopf's piece comes out about his good friend, which you really were with good friends with Redford.
Yeah. See, the thing is, my wife got to know him before I got to know my wife. And as soon as we got together, we had occasion to meet and we all liked each other and we had great conversations, and we would go out and stay in Santa Fe at his house, or he had a place in California, or we'd get together in New York or in Washington. And
wow.
And his wife, Billy, who is an artist, is also a friend, and we have some of her art here. And he was at our wedding, and we have a Great Pyrenees dog because he had 3 Great Pyrenees dogs, and we kind of liked his dogs.
Wow.
And
you used the word friend appropriately. I have used it about people I've spent an hour with.
Do you consider us to be friends, Pete?
I mean, not really, because we've mostly spent time this way, but also I'm desperate for it, and I've continued to make an effort to it.
Because I've kind of got a half-finished obituary for you that I'm just waiting to move.
I can't wait to read it. It's going to be just like your piece about Redford. Tell me about what you learned from him in terms of character, because I think that it was very poignant what you said.
Well, I mean, we learned a lot. And, I have to tell you, you can tell when you just look at any of the videos of him that have been out there. He really loved storytelling. He loved to talk about different parts of his life and stuff. So you got to know him pretty well. And some of it was great fun because, he was he liked baseball and he liked cars, and he would talk stories about Paul Newman and cars and stuff. And he had a good sense of humor. But, the reality, pull back a little bit. Here's a guy, he starts to make it in the sort of the second half of the 50s. By the early 60s, he's doing a couple movies like Barefoot in the Park. And by the end of the 60s, a huge star. And he could have done anything. And, after Butch Cassidy, after those movies, he could have done anything. He could have just coasted, been a big movie star. And he didn't. He wanted to do independent movies. He did movies like The Candidate or Downhill Racer or other Jeremiah Johnson as independent movies. And, of course, then he said, I'm going to break away from the studio system. And when he founded Sundance, he really changed the way movies are made. He changed, he essentially created or institutionalized independent movies. But he didn't just do that. He lived a lot of the time in Utah or in Santa Fe. He was a really committed environmentalist, really committed to indigenous people, did all sorts of things to support those kinds of causes, was politically active. I remember once having dinner with him and Bob Woodward in New York, and listening to them as they told the story of Redford, gets a hold of, all the president's men, thinks it should be a story, it should be a movie, and he calls up Woodward, and Woodward doesn't believe it's actually Redford.
Huh.
And then, they said, well, let's meet, and they have to go through all this sort of stuff so people don't talk about the two of them meeting, and it's kind of all the president's men-ish in, you know, how the story gets made. But, you know, he wasn't making it just because, oh, this is a great vehicle. He was making it because he thought it had something important to say, just like with ordinary people. He felt he was addressing something that was important to say. And, you know, that's the main takeaway. The main takeaway, what I wrote about in the article, is that he had a moment very early on in his life when he was going across Europe and he was thinking he was going to be an artist. He dropped out of college and he spent the night, as he told the story, and he told the story pretty often, and sitting in a room in Italy, and he stared into a mirror and he's like, that's not who I am. Who am I? And he came out on the other side and he said he's not going to be it as an artist. He wants to make a difference as an actor and ultimately as a filmmaker, and not just as an actor or filmmaker, but as somebody who made a difference, who used the tools at their disposal to make the world a better place. And, you know, everybody says that. When the day after you die, people say, you're a great humanitarian. In fact, you know, there are recent examples in American history, which I, you know, don't want to get into too deeply, where really bad, shitty people died. Maybe they were murdered. And, you know, we spend a week talking about them as if they're fucking saints. And they're not. But in the case of Robert Redford, he was what he appeared to be. And he was, and on top of that, he was a good guy. So that, you know, I feel very fortunate. And I'm like a kid from New Jersey. And although I have met a lot of famous people, starting with you, Pete, the reality is every time we were together or staying over at their house or going out to dinner or whatever, I was kind of pinching myself. And the funny thing that and I'll stop with this. But
go ahead.
My wife, you know, as you know, is an opera singer and then became a kind of diplomat and now teaches at Harvard, teaches cultural diplomacy and stuff. She was closer friends even than I was with him. She never saw any of his movies. And the day after he died, and I was like, you know, you should see some of these movies. And so we sat down, you know, in front of our big TV and watched some Redford movies.
Why did she not? Where did she grow up?
I don't know, but I am glad because, you know, we watched The Way We Were, which, by the way, I think is a crappy movie. But we watched The Way We Were. And he comes out and he's in this Navy whites uniform in the middle of this thing. And my wife practically fainted with how beautiful he was. You know, and I was like, I'm glad she didn't think of him that way.
By the way, I just love I've read that story a few times about how he was pursuing a life and career in fine arts as I think a painter, right? And then he's there and he looks in the mirror and he goes, you know what? I think I'll be an actor. It's like a sanitizer because the truth is he looked in the mirror and he saw what the rest of us saw. And he was like, I am fucking unbelievably beautiful and I could be a leading man in Hollywood because we've all had that. Like I did a similar thing. I looked in the mirror and I said, I'm a sidekick at best, and I think comedy is my path. And I made a similarly successful career.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it went exactly as you said it. I think he was really struggling. You know, he did one of the parts of the story when he talked about wandering across Europe there was that he spent some time before he was in Italy in the south of France. And he talked about sleeping on the beach in Cannes. And then, you know, 20 years later, being at the hotel that he could see from where he was sleeping on the beach, you know, at the Cannes Film Festival. And, you know, I don't know. He had a very lucky life. He had a huge amount of good fortune. I think like all of us, he did spend part of his youth trying to figure out who the hell he was.
It can bring us to the conversation about speech and who we are and how we decide to use it, because Redford famously used his in all the ways to advocate for several different issues. You mentioned environmentalism being one. And obviously the film industry and how you said he revolutionized that story has been told. And everybody in the film industry of a certain age knows of him. And every American, by the way, has a favorite Redford film that is indelible as soon as you mention it.
What's your favorite?
The Natural, for sure, without a doubt.
That's a great movie.
But I also liked, I will say, The Horse Whisperer, which he directed. I read that book first. I don't know. I was a very feminine young man and I loved it so much. And then I watched the movie and I loved it. Scarlett Johansson.
Pete, being sensitive is not necessarily a feminine trait.
I know, but it doesn't come across to viewers when you say it that way. The nuance that you just needed to put in is not where we're at yet. So insane sensitive sounds weak. And I'm very, very strong. Very strong.
Man.
Very strong. But you just wrote a piece. Let's work our way backwards, talking about using your platform and talking about obviously Jimmy Kimmel and you and me and anybody else who does what we do. Your piece at Substack it's titled, Wait, is there actually hope for the media? So has Jimmy Kimmel saved the media? It just came out right before we went live here.
Well, that's not actually a piece I wrote. It's a conversation I had with two media critics.
I'm sorry, the conversation with Jeff Jarvis and Dan Frumkin, right?
And Dan Frumkin. And every few months I talk to them, and I really enjoy it. They're both really smart, but they also have not yet quite lost their sense of humor. Dan Frumkin made the point that the successful pushback on Disney, on Jimmy Kimmel, that was a significant thing. And he also said that he sensed that there were some changes afoot in some media. And to my surprise and to Jeff Jarvis's surprise, Dan cited the New York Times and said he felt that they were getting tougher and talking straighter, which I'm not sure I agree 100%, but he's a very smart guy. And if he's seeing that, I think that's an encouraging sign. And of course, Jimmy Kimmel, and this is your line of work, but I think it's so interesting. He was off, and then there was pressure, and then he was on again, and he comes on the air to do the show, and Nexstar stations and the Sinclair stations wouldn't run his show,
right?
And so that's a quarter of the country or something like that, and it's still got super strong ratings, and 25 million people saw his monologue streaming. And so all of a sudden you think, well, it may be that these oligarchs are buying up networks and platforms and think they can control everything. But maybe they can't. And maybe there are just too many ways for a person to go and express themselves without censorship, at least at the moment. And that was that's a pretty damn encouraging thing.
What is the natural progression if they continue to consolidate media and also be in control of that media for whatever their interests would be? And this could be true of any political ideology, but in this case, we're talking about potentially Christian.
It could be bad. And by the way, throughout history, rich people have tried to buy up media and use it to get their way. I mean, Thomas Jefferson hired a guy to work in the State Department when he was Secretary of State to put out pamphlets attacking his enemy, Alexander Hamilton. And, Hamilton had a pamphleteer who was doing his stuff. And of course, we know about William Randolph Hearst, and we know about Citizen Kane. And Citizen Kane, here's the greatest American movie ever. And it's about a rich guy who wants to, use that power. But the question is, do we live in an era in which that kind of power can be concentrated, centralized? I think we live in an oligarchy where billionaires set the rules for our society. I don't think we're functioning democracy anymore. I think American capitalism has gone completely haywire, and a tiny fraction of 1% really pick politicians and judges and guide the law in the way that they want to guide the law. And I think that's, obviously a grave problem. But there are some democratizing technological trends out there. And even though big tech controls a lot of things, and the guys who run big tech didn't turn out to be the good oligarchs we thought they would be. They're just more robber barons. But things like streaming and the distributed nature of the web and so forth do allow a guy like you, you've got your own network, you've got big audiences, people are following you every week. You have the kind of influence that maybe once a metropolitan newspaper had. When I was doing the show with Frumkin and Jarvis, I quickly looked and Morning Joe, which we consider to be this big driver of politics in America, they get 700,000 listeners for an average show. But of those 700,000 listeners, because most people who watch news and stuff on TV are quite old, if you take the 25 to 54 demographic, there's 65,000 people. 65,000 people in the target demographic are watching that show each morning. That's got to be less than your average episode.
It is not, actually, surprisingly. My numbers are not as big as Morning Joe's.
I mean, but the reality is, I just did I every once in a while go on, not speak of my podcast, but or DSR.
You're allowed to speak of it. Like that's part of what. It's not like I'm paying you to be here. Please talk about your work. You think I'm some kind of a?
I've been meaning to talk to you about getting paid for doing this, but I do write columns for the Daily Beast, and so I go on, and they now have podcasts that also go out on YouTube and their YouTube channel. And the average one of those recently gets 250, 300,000 downloads.
I think the best example of an individual, like you're talking still though about a network. I'll make the point for you by simply saying Glenn Kirshner's videos on YouTube get like 100, and it's just him. It's fucking just Glenn to camera, no budget. Hundreds of thousands of views versus Morning Joe, lights, cameras, salaries, and all the rest.
And I think, that's right. And, one of the things that I find kind of just sad, and also, it's just, I guess it's being an old guy and watching time go by. But one of the reasons that Paramount was willing to step away from Colbert and ABC was willing to step away from Jimmy Kimmel is they weren't doing so great. They do okay. They make them some money. But they're not like, Johnny Carson was the golden goose of NBC, right? They would never have fucked around with that. It was just too important. And when CBS News really was able to call its own shots, it was just too important. And, in these cases, people, if you want late night variety, you do what I do, which is you roll over, you pick up your phone, you go to TikTok, you go to Instagram, you scroll through, and instead of having Johnny pick the comedian, I get to pick the comedian.
Well, not only that, and I'm being serious when I say this, like I'm not watching any comedian. I'm watching scare videos sometimes for 20 minutes because nothing makes me laugh harder than watching someone walk in the room and be scared. And I'm watching that sometimes for 3-4 hours.
You are so fucked up. But I watch what I cannot get enough of is people being reunited with their animals.
Yeah.
And then
okay.
The animals run up like a big lion puts its paws around their neck, or the elephants run down the river to hug their caretaker, or somebody's horse is reunited.
When I watch those, I understand the obviousness is why they're so fun to watch, inspiring and distracting because it's beautiful. But every time I watch one of those videos, I think of reality. In reality, each one of those beasts has devoured 10 times how many they hugged. And just this week, a guy raised a tiger. And I read the headline, man was mauled by the tiger. And I was reminded of the great Norm Macdonald joke. Well, I don't know what caused the mauling, but I think it's because it's a tiger. That's why. Maybe that's why. Maybe you shouldn't have a pet tiger. I don't know.
That's a really good Norm Macdonald impression.
Loved him. Okay. Well,
I watched Norm Macdonald
a lot. the best.
Late
My
at
all-time
night,
fave.
on TikTok.
Yeah.
He's big in the feed. He's very funny.
And you can watch him instead of live Jimmy or live Colbert. And so I get the point you're making, but are you worried about a U.S. administration controlling the inner tubes that we have access to? So, because we're talking about Substack, YouTube, and all the rest that we're currently streaming.
I mean, look, I wrote a column for the Daily Beast right after the Kimmel thing, and I said the First Amendment is dead. And, a bunch of people wrote back, oh, no, it's not dead. I still have free speech. And it's like, look, here's the way the First Amendment works. If some people can't say what they want to say, it's dead. If some voices are silenced, it's dead. It's just a matter of time before it's your voice or the opinion you like that is in the crosshairs. And that's, and this administration systematically, since it came in, has attacked freedom of expression in universities, in law,
the Kennedy Center,
in scientific research, on television, with people who are their critics, using the Department of Justice to silence them, using stopping funding grants to silence them, using the FCC now to silence them. And it's not slowing down. It's accelerating. They're going after James Comey. They're going after the Soros Foundation. They're going after, this long list of his enemies. And a lot of his supporters are trying to buy up media, and that does give them some clout. So, what I was talking about before are kind of the green shoots of hope. But these are green shoots of hope that are sprouting in a huge, large field full of manure right now.
Yeah, no, that's a fair way of putting it. I think that's just a pretty accurate way of putting it. So how do we know when they take over the internet and they shut us down? I mean, first they come for the Midas Touch Boys and David Pakman.
I hope they come for the Midas Touch Boys. Leave a little more room for you and me.
Jesus, exactly. These guys. So
They've had their success. They've made their money. It's just like the Pod Save America guys. They're all handsome and skinny and in Hollywood and making the cash.
Yeah.
And Obama loves them.
Right.
And they're out in the universities with adoring crowds. Enough. How much money do they need to make? How famous do they need to be? Isn't it time that, you broadcasting from a barn in upstate New York?
It's a great brand, though. You would think it would be more popular. That's the thing. The pink light. I'm shocked that people aren't just driven by my lighting effects alone. But hey,
the pink light, truly.
Yeah.
It looks like the window in a bordello in Amsterdam.
Now, I would call it just being sensitive. Okay, so let me ask you about Charlie Kirk a little bit. Can we talk about that guy?
Yeah, I already did a moment ago, but I didn't use his name. But go on.
Yeah, but now I want to hear what you have to say because you wrote a piece about it at the Substack. Everyone got the story of the murder of Charlie Kirk wrong. I just want to ask you first. I trust your judgment. I think you have a lot of credibility. And I would tell listeners and viewers, both of them, that you're off the air as genuine as you are on the air, and you're pretty open and honest about things. Do you have any question around what the official story is around the shooter, around these bullets, why is everybody writing on their bullets? Do you question Kash Patel, the FBI?
That does seem to be a new thing. I'd never heard of it.
It's Kash Patel's handwriting, which I think is really telling. But no, there's a lot of serious people who I respect who are just asking questions. Are you just asking questions about the details surrounding the shooter?
No.
How about the text message conversation between him and his so-called lover? Any questions around that?
Let me put it this way. Anything that the administration or the FBI publicly announced about these people is suspect because we already know they tried to spin it in a certain direction before there was any evidence to support that. And we know that the message of the right-wing media, the message of J.D. Vance and Fox and so forth was the left is behind this. They're out to get us. And I'm skeptical of that. But I think, there are other stories here that are bigger stories. I think the deification of this guy is a bigger story, not just because he had a lot of supporters and, the right-wing media loved him, but because what it does is it says, oh, if you slur black women, or if you launch slurs against gays, or if you make unfounded claims about the left and saying it's dangerous, or you say that people you don't agree with ought to be thrown out of the country or put to death or something, that you can, be sort of elevated up to hero status for that kind of behavior.
Should be mentioned, the one thing you didn't mention, I got to interrupt you, the worst thing he did was his organization was in my school district handing out buttons. What he did was he specifically targeted specific people through his organization, trans people, the most vulnerable people. And he destroyed their lives while they were living. He targeted them by name.
And I think here's the thing, his wife may miss him. I'd like to get to his wife in a moment, but his wife may miss him. People around him may have cared about him. They may have found something in what motivated him that was sincere. But he was a bad person, and he did bad things, and he hurt lots of people, and he was not an advocate for free speech. And when the people in power can bully the media into these false narratives, he did politics the right way, that's a real problem for America, because it allows the effort to recruit people into that movement like that to, continue. And I have to tell you, I watched that rally or listened to that rally, and it was one of the most chilling things that I had ever heard. I mean, you had crazy, divisive speeches like Stephen Miller. But even more chilling were the two stars of the event, in my view. And I wrote about this at Daily Beast, but J.D. Vance and then Erica Kirk. Because when I heard them, I heard them talking about the future of MAGA. In fact, Trump was kind of the outlier at this event. He didn't fit in. He was an afterthought. They were the main show. And their message is the new frontman for MAGA, replacing Donald Trump, is Jesus. And how are you going to go and criticize us for that? Because Jesus is Jesus. And they are going overt, out of the closet. White Christian nationalism is the core of the movement. Now, it always has been the core of the movement, but it is becoming even more so the message, and the blurring of the lines, the adding of the terminology of faith. Pete Hegseth saying, the only book that is worth reading is the Bible, which may be his rationalization for never having read a book. But, what is going on here lets us see that MAGA, the right, this divisive, intolerant movement in America, is not going away the day that Donald Trump shuffles off this mortal coil. It's not, or falls down a escalator, apparently has trouble with stairs. But, there are people ready to pick up. I mean, that Erica Kirk, man, that was scary shit. And here was her husband's funeral.
I didn't see her speech. All I heard was that she forgave the shooter, and I saw her cuddling with Trump, which I thought was super upsetting and weird.
Well, those were sort of set pieces, right?
Yeah, okay, so what did she give me? The
bulk of the speech was...
I'll go watch it.
Charlie saw this as a religious revival. Mm. And our movement is a religious revival movement. Mm. And I am the new CEO, which I thought was a little weird that she announced she's the new CEO of Turning Point during the speech.
Oh, sounds
like
we're
going to expand these programs because essentially, we've had for the past 10 years, American politics dominated by a kind of cheap Queens con man, right? Kind of low grade character who, it's a kind of Joe Pesciville, right? Is Donald Trump, right? Sure. But what we're getting next is another more American homegrown form of hucksterism, which is televangelism. And J.D. Vance was modeling his behavior on televangelism. Erica Kirk was modeling her behavior on televangelism. This is Tammy Faye land. This is a whole other world, which is sort of eating the brains of America and corroding its soul. And unless we are willing to say that, unless we're willing to say, no, faith is for your home. Religion is not for your government. We are not a Christian nation. We are not a white nation. We are a nation for everybody. Unless you're willing to say it and stand up and challenge them, we're going to be in trouble. And what they have been very successful in doing, the last point for the past couple of weeks, is shooting down anybody who tried to say it. Getting them fired, getting them silenced, not letting them on the air, and only leaving room for people to say, well, this Charlie Kirk, he was onto something, or we really need. I was driving this morning. I was listening to Morning Joe, and there was some dude on it talking about we need a national conversation about Jesus and the role of Jesus in our life. And I'm like, we fucking do not need a national conversation about that. You want to have a conversation about the role of Jesus in your life? Have it. You want to do it in your church? Do it. Okay? But that is not what our leaders should be talking about.
That's what you say today, but I brought you here today, David, to give you an opportunity to have Jesus in your life. Folks, bring him in.
It's like, have you been watching South Park this year?
Oh, I haven't. I heard this new episode dropped today, and it goes after.
The new one dropped today, but the past couple episodes, the guidance counselor at the South Park school has been replaced by Jesus. So Jesus is walking around in the school system. In the school system, and that was the one reaction I had to your point. And go read this piece. What will replace MAGA and Trump? It's Jesus. It's Jesus. And we heard, I got to go watch her speech now to see more of what you're saying. But because I've been in the school board fights. Now you talk about liking scare videos. You're going to love this.
I'm going to turn you on to these videos, by the way. Scare videos are the greatest. There's nothing funnier.
I hate that stuff. You
don't think it's funny to watch someone be scared? Oh, wow.
Dude,
but like when they do this thing, I
think it's physiological. But people being scared, what's worse than that for me is people being embarrassed. Like when people have what's the term I'm thinking of, where the mistaken identity videos, or, somebody pretends they're one person and somebody else, or they get it wrong. I have to turn off the TV. I can't watch it. Physically makes me.
I understand what you're saying, that feeling, but you'll get past it when you watch a person walk in a room and another person scares them. And when they do this thing, it's like they shake and it's like a grown, tough man. There isn't anything funnier than that.
I've seen a million. We're
going to watch them together.
There's this one couple that constantly
they always do it to each other.
Yes. A balloon.
They're that couple's like millionaires as a result of dropping balloons filled with shaving cream on each other. They're famous. And by the way, what a wonderful relationship they must have.
Can you imagine?
He's a cop.
Can you imagine living in that house?
It'd be like living with.
You wouldn't open a door. You'd be.
Finally, getting back to the conversation, and then I'll let you go here. But the Christian nationalism taking over, I feel like the most insidious or vulnerable place, or where it's really taken over in a lot of ways, is in our schools. I've been in the fight in my school district, and it's crazy. And the most non-religious thinking places, how much religion is coming into play, and organizations like Turning Point are in the schools. I'm really excited to talk with my friend Carla Hernandez-Matz, who's just taken over at this amazing organization called Educated We Stand. I would love to connect her with you guys at Deep State Radio, because they're an organization that is a nonprofit been built to counter the Moms from Liberty people, which work with the Turning Point people. But all of that is Christian nationalism, just to be clear. And they're in the schools, and people are really afraid, rightfully afraid, to fight them in public because of what they did to me and what they do to anybody who speaks out. They threaten you in your fucking home. It's crazy.
Look, I'm sure I will not come up with language that is as eloquent as the issue warrants. And I'm sorry, but I have to say the first thing I thought of was this 18th century French quote where I said, "The world will not be a safe place until the last king is strangled to death with the entrails of the last priest." But that's not really my point. For some reason, that has lived with me. But
well,
you know,
George Carlin updated that bit. But yeah,
what you're supposed to be promoting in school is critical reasoning, skepticism, and curiosity. And you know what the opposite of those things is?
Fascism.
Faith. Yes, and that's a good book. And Randy Weingarten,
I just had her
is extremely important voice and leader in America.
Yeah. I'm sorry. The opposite of those is faith.
Trump just nominated somebody to be an assistant secretary of defense who once called for the death of Randy Weingarten.
Oh, well, that must make the Weingarten feel.
But anyway, the point is, there's the place for faith and religion is in churches and in homes, in private conversations. And people should be able to do whatever they want. We should tolerate whatever they want. You know, if they find solace for it in this particularly screwed up planet we're on, as they say from, where I come from, sei gesund. However, not in the schools, not in the government. The government should be a religion-free zone. Schools should be religion-free zones, because if they're not, then people who do not believe as the majority do will be intimidated, cowed, forced away from their own thinking, and will fail as a society. And but we're trying to turn the clock back to several hundred years.
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's I think all the time of Handmaid's Tale. I watched that series.
Well, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But what was really good? You know what was a big hit that I think we should all think about a little bit? The Enlightenment.
Oh, okay.
It was a big hit in the 18th century. Science, reading, critical reasoning, getting away from superstition. Those were good days. If we're going to turn the clock back, let's go back to those good old days. Thomas Jefferson, the Jefferson Bible?
Yes. I mean, I'm familiar with what it was. I don't know what it said, though.
Well, Thomas Jefferson had a Bible in his house. And what he did, because he, like many of the other people in the government, were deists, and they sort of didn't believe in the magic in the Bible. They believed in the ethics, the ethos, the morality of the Bible. So he took the Bible and he cut out all the references to miracles and to God. There were little holes in the pages. Because this is the distraction. The reason we should be here is if it improves us as people.
I am going to fact check you on that quote. Rothkopf, that Diderot did not create the king priest quote. He popularized it. It was written by Jean Meisler.
Yeah, it was, and I didn't say Diderot said it. What Diderot deserves credit for is creating the world's first encyclopedia.
Oh, eat shit, Bill Boyle. He's the one who said it. Okay, finally, just got to ask you, I just see this breaking news that you may have seen. Pete Hegseth called a whole bunch of people to a meeting, and apparently now the reporting is White House begins plan for mass firings if there's a government shutdown. Oh, no, that's not the Hegseth. That's a separate story. Sorry, that's a separate story. Hegseth orders rare urgent meeting of hundreds of generals and admirals. Do you know anything about this meeting?
Yeah, I do. And I mean, I know what people know, which is that something like 900 general officers and flag officers have been ordered to go to Quantico, Virginia, where there's going to be a meeting of a type I don't think any of us have ever seen in our lives. And the agenda for the meeting is not clear. I think there's a suspicion that it's more of a political show. It's not like we're about to go to war. Or there's an alien invasion. And it's more part of the, sort of Department of War, warrior ethos, fighting wokeism in the military kind of thing.
That sounds like a fun weekend.
Yeah, except, first of all, getting all the leaders of our military in one place, that's bad operational security. That's a bad idea. That creates a risk. But quite apart from that, what this administration has done to reduce the operational readiness of our armed forces is dangerous, systematic, and getting worse. We're taking military budgets and off military personnel and saying, go to the border, go clean up garbage in our cities. That doesn't help. We're firing generals and admirals because they're women or people of color, despite their experience. That doesn't help. We are alienating big parts of our armed forces because they are trans or gay or black or women, and turning away people who want to serve our country and have done so with great distinction. We don't have an NSC for all intents and purposes. It's shrunk up to almost nothing. Marco Rubio is still the interim national security advisor.
He's doing good, though.
We have alienated our allies. We've embraced our enemies. Trump wants to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on something called Golden Dome, which it's not real. It can't be done. It's a boondoggle. Trump supporters are getting billion-dollar sweetheart deals from the military, more corruption. But why is this important? Because it puts Americans at risk. We live in a dangerous world. And Republicans say we're the party of national security and strong defense. They're not. And this meeting is kind of a symbol of that. And I'm not even getting into Pete Hegseth, texting out classified information or not being able to keep his own staff in order. Everybody quit his staff. Nobody wanted to work for him. So we have a big mess in our Department of Defense. And I think this meeting is going to draw attention to that.
Or it's about aliens, which you didn't.
I did mention that as a possibility. I discounted the possibility because if they are advanced enough to be able to make it to our planet, they're advanced enough to know that this is the universe's equivalent of the bad restaurants on the New Jersey Turnpike. Keep going. Wait for the next one.
That's a great way to end it. Thank you very much, sir. We didn't even get to your piece about Trump's amazing speech at the UN. I thought you were a little hard on him, but people should go read that at the Daily Beast. Yeah, I thought it was good. I thought he did a good job. So
the speech?
Yeah, I thought it was good. Yeah, I liked it. People are being really hard on him. And, he had a hard day. They turned the escalator off on him. Thought that was mean.
That teleprompter, they turned that off.
I thought that was both. They
believe in science.
They tried
Those assholes. They believe in climate change. Crazy.
I thought it made us look strong when he said to all the world leaders, "Your countries are going to hell." I thought that made us.
And I'm the only one who knows what's right.
And yes, and I know, and I've predicted everything. And America's the hottest country.
You're right. You're right, Pete, and I'm wrong.
Thank you.
Trump is a fantastic president.
Orator. I didn't say he's a great president. I said this speech was strong.
He's a great
strong
orator, and every day I thank God that I live in the era of Shohei Ohtani.
I took my dad to the Yanks the other night.
Yeah?
And
was it good?
We had a great time, but there was a Dutch family ahead of us that were clearly only at the game as a novelty. They were playing Candy Crush and making Snapchat videos with a Yankees foam finger. And my dad was horrified and offended that they were there doing that and not enjoying
those jerks, because, they don't realize that they're worse off for living in a country that provides everybody with health care has a social safety net so nobody is, starving to death.
Well, they were eating
dog food when they're old people.
They were eating like healthcare wouldn't be a concern. They were monsters. I'm telling you this.
They ride bicycles everywhere.
They did look fit, but the things they put in, they ordered every piece of meat that the stadium sold. My dad thought it was
a bicycle everywhere. You could eat anything you want.
That's a good point. There's only 9 of them though in total, so they don't have to worry about
in all of Holland.
Their population is very small. It's easy to ride a bike around and not have to worry about anything.
Have you been to the Netherlands?
Yeah, it's wonderful.
It's fantastic. That's why your place looks like a bordello in Amsterdam.
Yes, I was inspired by a young lady.
Your favorite.
A young lady that
took favorite spot in the red light district in Amsterdam. It looks just like it.
A young lady that took me in for a small amount of money. She was kind. She was thoughtful. And I'm very grateful
to her.
It's a hard
world, Pete, and wherever you can find love.
You go to Europe with your best friend and he's getting laid in every country and you're going home alone. You try that and see if you're not going to head into the red light district where he and I went, and I'll never forget, this was a joke in my stand-up act. They had live sex shows, and they advertised them as live sex shows, and at the bottom it said air conditioned. And I just thought how hilarious it was that was the caveat. Like, I'd like to go to see a live sex show, but I want it to be in a really comfortable temperature because I wouldn't want it to be somehow, because that's the thing I'd be worried about is I'm watching people have sex live. So of course we didn't do it because we're not monsters, but some people apparently do.
Well, those Europeans, they're crazy about this stuff. It's legal. It's regulated. People aren't passing around all sorts of diseases. They're crazy. Those crazy Europeans, they should be more like us.
Yes. And they should elect leaders like ours. And then, and only then, will they be the hottest country on earth.
In the world. Everybody says it.
David Rothkopf, always an honor. I love talking to you. This was a great one. I really appreciate you being here today. Your check is in the mail, not to your address.
Put it all the other checks I've received from you.
You're welcome. You're very welcome, sir.
Thank you, Pete.
Go subscribe to everything Deep State Radio Network. Read him at The Beast and support him on Substack.
Subscribe to the Substack.
Where my mom is
Deep State Radio.
My mom is his biggest fan and subscriber.
And I'm her fan. I'm sure I'm not her biggest, but
well, she's a bigger fan now that she knows how close you were to Redford. I found out that my dad loved him even more than my mom, though. So it turned into a weird situation because of Jeremiah.
So your dad was a little
bit, maybe for him. Hall pass. Called him his hall pass. I heard him say it.
I think, people should have all, my wife, we once had that conversation and I was like, well, who do you want a hall pass for?
Yeah.
And she said, Noam Chomsky.
Jesus Christ.
And I was like, okay, that's fine. And she said, Jane Goodall. And I was like, okay, this is going better than I thought it could go.
Wow. Chomsky, I bet you, is a sweet, sweet lover.
I'm sure he is. He had a stroke last year. I don't know
what
he is. But I have to say, I bet he is. And by the way, what I just told you about my wife, 100% true.
I mean, I believe it because those are two amazing choices. Who is yours along those lines that we wouldn't necessarily
into that?
Come on.
I would never. My wife is all the hall pass I ever needed.
Oh, stop it. Come on. Give me some, long pass starlet that you grew up.
Man, Ingrid Bergman.
Thank you
okay.
for submitting somebody. We're all better for it. Let's go look her up, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you don't know who Ingrid Bergman is, go look her up.
Thank you, David Rothkopf. Really appreciate you. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for watching live.
Goodbye.
There you have it, everybody. David Rothkopf. Subscribe to Deep State Radio Network and his Substack, Need to Know, and follow and read him on The Daily Beast. Follow him on Blue Sky and tell him that you heard him here. That's all I've got for you. I might put out my conversation with Barry Ritholtz if I can get it together. It's going to be a busy Friday. I should be appearing on Brian Shapiro's show live later on YouTube. And I think that's any number of things I might schedule coming up still. So stay tuned. Subscribe to youtube.com/standupwithpete as well as substack.com/standupwithpete for me if you could. Give a review. We don't have nearly enough reviews on this podcast. Wherever you listen, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Could you write that on your to-do list? Could you do that? That'd be huge. Okay, that's it. That's all I've got for you. John Carroll writes and performs all the music for the show. We're going to go to his album release party in November 7th in Virginia, Purcellville, Virginia. Hope to see you there. John Carroll, take it away.
They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. We got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.